Welcome. My name is Chris Sawchuk, and I lead Hackett's Global Sourcing and Procurement Advisory practice. Joining me today on this panel are four distinguished executives. Paula Martinez, who's the Chief Procurement Officer at Novartis. Cyril Perrat, who is the Chief Procurement Officer at BT Sourced, the procurement arm of BT. Vanessa Pepperell, who's the Chief Operating Officer and VP Strategy for Equanima, the procurement function for the Santander Group. And Keith Hausman, who's the Chief Revenue Officer for Globality. Welcome to all of you. Now, we just heard from Phil First and Joel Hyatt, where they discussed the opportunity that organizations have to place procurement at the heart of their enterprise ESG strategies. Today, we are seeing an expansion of procurement's value proposition beyond the traditional to being more of an enabler of growth, to being more of an enabler of innovation, and to be more of an enabler of enterprise ESG objectives. So to begin our panel discussion, I'd like to start with Paula. Now, Paula, you joined Novartis 2 years ago to digitally transform the procurement organization into a world-class performer, and one that leverages data to a much higher degree. As an industry leader, can you share briefly your perspectives as to how organizations can take a more differentiated approach to sourcing by leveraging technology to engage your stakeholders, whether they would be internal or external, in new and innovative ways?
Thank you for the question, Chris. I've been a procurement practitioner for over 20 years, and the last 10 years leading and driving procurement transformations. One of the things that has always frustrated me the most as a procurement leader has been how come in our personal lives the procurement experience is so seamless, and in the corporate world it's sometimes so hard to get things done. If we think about pain points that our customers, business stakeholders, suppliers, teams have, they've been around for a very long time. Whether it's getting access to clean spend data, whether it's our end users able to find the right content, and then being able to manage the procure-to-pay process, including vendor creation in a seamless way, whether it's having adequate solutions for tail spend management. I feel really hopeful now about the future ahead of us, because technology is finally going to enable the solution to some of these long-standing pain points. But to get there are a number of prerequisites that we need to take into account. The first one is data. Without a clear data strategy, data governance, data architecture, it's going to be very hard for anybody to be able to move forward and to solve some of these pain points or even add value beyond solving pain points. The second one is really access to technology. Fortunately, a lot of these pain points can be solved through solutions that are out there that are cloud-based. Therefore, the access to that technology and even the cost of accessing that technology is not like it was before. The third point that I would like to highlight is really about the ability to develop the right use cases that will add value to your business stakeholders and to their customers. The fourth one is all about talent. We need to get our organizations ready to adopt and to extract the value out of these solutions. And the fifth one is all about having the long-term vision, and as well as being very resilient and having lots of patience to experiment a lot and to learn a lot for the failures as well as from the successes.
You know, Paula, as you talk about that, it's very interesting. As you know, I think when you talk about the fact that this this technology is not going to be successful without some of the key enablers you highlighted: the data, the people, the vision for the organization. So thank you. And what I'd like to now move is over to Cyril. And Cyril, you've been quite creative in your approach to creating a new standalone organization at BT called BT Sourced to drive new and innovative ways to conducting supply management. You've also introduced new technology. You've introduced partnership-based approaches. You even, introduce new innovative ways to engage with startups. So with all of that, how has this impacted the experience of your stakeholders, whether that be internal stakeholders, whether it be your suppliers, or some of the partners you've been working with and engaging with BT?
So thank you very much, Chris. And first of all, you're right. So we have created a bit of disruption within BT with the creation of BT Sourced, and I would like to thank my team for that. So next week actually, so we've got the inauguration of BT Sourced, the formal inauguration of BT Sourced. And you're right, and I would like to echo as well what Paula said. So earlier she said that she doesn't understand why you cannot use your mobile to order something, and it's like so easy to go on Amazon, and it's so cumbersome when you go to your P2P process. Basically, I've got like a motto which is relatively simple. I want everything in 2 clicks, and I want everything mobile. So meaning that if I cannot access to the data, if I cannot access to the information on my mobile, if I cannot access in 2 clicks, it's too complicated. So when I joined BT, for example, so what I find it's a landscape with like 35 buying channels, all tools, homegrown tools, fragmented systems, so very, very complex. If, for example, I wanted just to ask for the spend, so I had a team in our team in India, 2 people, so crunching the data for 2 weeks, then putting that into an SQL database, and then after that I had to ask the request on the spend, and then do a pivot table, and after almost like half an hour, I get an answer. Right now, I've got a 14 billion of spend of BT in my mobile phone, and it's something as well which is interesting because what the approach that we had was let's go like a startup. So let's avoid as well to have any decision top down from the CPO. So we created a BT Procurement Garage, which is basically as well a way of engaging with all the startups in the ecosystem on the procurement and supply chain ecosystem. And what I did, so I gave to practitioners, so we look at obviously our procurement process, and I gave to my team, so the practitioners, the freedom of going and picking the best solution that they will find out on the market and that will really fit the purpose. And as well with the motto of 2 clicks, everything mobile. And that's really fantastic because when you empower your people and you say, go and find the right solution, so they came back with tons of stuff. And I think tons of stuff because so far we have not been able to find like the silver bullet, the application which is doing everything. We've got e-sourcing like everyone, but e-sourcing is something like, I'm like Paula, I have 20 plus years in procurement. So e-sourcing was like something that was the big stuff when I was not having gray hairs. But now e-sourcing, it's a bit like the past. You've got AI, you've got the blockchain, deep learning, machine learning. So you've got plenty of very exciting stuff. And so the team went there and they said, hey, there's no one solution. There's tons of stuff. But they are matching exactly our, for example, our ask, our demand, and your demand as well. And that's what we have done. So we have already implemented 11 platforms. We are working with startups as well, and that's really good because so we're helping them to develop their products, we're using their products, and because we're selling technology for a living, so we're also selling from time to time, so their own technology of those startups, so we're making business with them and selling that to our customers. So this best of breed approach that we had, and that we have actually, so that we still have, it's really based on the fact that right now there's not one solution. You've got so much technology which is available, so many stuff available, and that will really help the team to do their job. And which is really fantastic is that my spend cube, well, I would say spend cube to make it traditional. So my spend cube, the main users are not anymore procurement, but it's finance and it's sales because as well, so they can at any point of time in 2 clicks and on their mobile, so they can go in and check how much money they are spending for their accounts, and they can really understand how their P&L is and where there's issue. And it's really enabling as well to have a very good dialogue with our team because we can sit and we can say, okay, so for your account, that's all the supplier that we're using, and maybe we can do something there, we can do something there. The same on the risk side. The risk side, and what we're offering to our customers is to connect their risk platform to our risk platform, and we have created as well a complete ecosystem around this risk management, dynamic risk management platform that we have. Again, so connecting additional startups, and you spoke about ESG, so there are some which are focused on ESG, some other focus obviously much more on the risk, cyber risk, because it's something which is really growing fast. We've got all of that. So that's basically the approach that we have, best of breed, because there's no one solution for the time being. And we're super enthusiastic about being fully digital and in 2 clicks and everything mobile.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, Sarah, you highlighted a lot of different types of things that you're doing. And, interesting to me is, as you talked about, I think you called it a garage, with the technology. And I have actually a follow-up question for you there. As you think about that garage and, I guess one of the questions that a lot of organizations have is that how do you justify the investment to actually put in, because I'm assuming that you have some dedicated resources going do that. How did you sort of justify actually putting that together? And then also, do you see this as a sustainable capability going forward?
So it's a very good question, Chris. In terms of cost, it's very simple. As I said, so they are practitioners. I mean that we've got a small team, which is part of our transformation team doing it. And then so we're using as well our own people, so meaning that, and they are super enthusiastic. They want to do it as well. So cost of doing it, it's pretty much nothing, I would say. And actually, so the return is big because we are going much more faster. We're simplifying our processes. Very interesting as well to hear that we are now as well with our new chief digital officer. She said it's exactly what I want for the company, and we're started just like 2 years ago. So we're exactly on the right track. So, and I can see that actually. So going for probably, I don't know, next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, because there are so many techs with technology which are coming. So meaning that we've got some ideas. So for example, for me, one of the big step would be the voice. So I did that already in the past. I had a bit of an experience. I used Alexa to order office supplies and travel and stuff like that. So there's like, I would say, endless possibilities there. So I do not see the garage closing the door very soon. So, but actually, so I believe that we have to increase the size of the garage.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, it's the technology, and as we think about the future, the digital becomes more and more important. So building and growing those capabilities become, very core to the future. I'd like to now switch over to Vanessa. And Vanessa, similar to BT and what Cyril had highlighted in the organization that he set up, Aquanima is also a standalone company and leading the procurement for the Santander Group and, my understanding, even for other companies. And that a large focus for your company has been around ESG and leveraging technology with your suppliers, especially those that share a similar commitment to, the ESG goals that you guys hold. Now, my question is how has this helped to elevate the role of procurement at the Santander Group?
Yeah, clearly, I'm going to focus and be very, very precise in what I'm going to explain, because we fully believe on ESG, because the ESG has come to stay. This is no longer a tick on the box. This is something that we need to be committed. And sustainability means belong in the time. And if we go further away of our beliefs, it's also something very practical, because the more sustainable companies are better rated to get better finance and also be part of finance and investment funds. So just because of that, we are sure that this movement that has started, it's coming bigger and bigger. And in this sense, Aquanima has been part of this way of working with Santander, who's fully committed on ESG values as a finance company. And we have different initiatives, some internal and some external. Coming into an internal initiatives, we had an internal awareness of what ESG means. So everybody working in Santander and also everybody working in Aquanima fully understand what it means to become ESG aligned. And it's no longer talking about being green. It's much more than that. So as we are a big company, also we are fully committed and we feel responsible of transferring these values and this conscious throughout the supply chain. So that's why we started with some external initiatives. We have some awareness sessions and training sessions with the most strategical suppliers to us. Also, we have developed a very, very specific ESG onboarding questionnaire where we start in a path of development for our suppliers to become more and more ESG aligned. Also, we've held sessions with different companies where we change our visions around ESG to how to balance price versus sustainability, because sometimes it's difficult to balance and to find the balance. And also, something that is really important to us is how we're getting this knowledge to the students. So we also have some initiatives with the universities on training sessions on how ESG and procurement gets along with the strategy of a company. And being procurement means being one of the leading roles in this area. So we are the transmission of these values and this knowledge from the company, from Santander, throughout the supply chain. So this is a very really leading role and has put us in a higher level. So we are fully committed. We have some very, very good results. And this is a starting point that it's going to be increased and follow in the following years, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And what I'm seeing is that, that driving that sustainability values, the ESG all the way on through your supply chain. One of a quick follow-up question I have for you is, what impact has this kind of effort that you've been under and focusing on had on the ability to, I'll say, drive the growth of the Santander Group? Have you seen an impact from that way as well?
Yes, of course, because I think that we have, thousands of customers, and they're more and more concerned about ESG, about sustainability and the responsibility we have as a big company. So if we make sure that we reduce our risks in this sense, and we also have minimum requirements to our third parties, we make sure that they feel and they can rely on Santander as a group that cares for the ESG values. So we've seen very good feedback. There are more and more initiatives jointly done with procurement area. And also in terms, for example, in negotiations, we also take into account as a key factor for awarding these ESG values. We make an assessment, we evaluate, and we take into account the ESG factor as a decision taken. So it's been amazing how this has been improved in 1 year, in some months. And I'm sure that the following months will be more and more intense on this growth. And after the COVID crisis, even more, because we are fully committed to the well-being of the people with the environmental issues and also with the good governance of the companies. So, yes.
Yeah, and I think this is a great example of how, procurement, and all of you, has really moved beyond that traditional role in terms of new ways to enable your companies and their success in the market. Keith, I want to turn to you now, and you work with a lot of different transformational leaders. People like Paula and Cyril and Vanessa that we've been speaking to, and you've seen the procurement function evolve quite significantly, especially over the last year with the pandemic and some of the other challenges within the marketplace. Can you share some of your experiences and highlight why you believe that procurement's role and what we're doing today is more important potentially than what we have seen over the last decade?
Sure. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. As you sort of preluded, there is a lot of interaction that I have actually with CPOs through a Catalyst series that DPW runs, as well as our own think tank, which includes 15 leading CPOs. And the constant themes and perspectives that I hear about how things are changing now versus the last 10 years and going forward are a few, and I'll raise 5 points. I mean, I think number one, CPOs are starting to look at spend or their spending, not per se as a cost, but as an asset to drive social impact, an asset to drive transparency, fair play, governance, an asset to drive innovation and new product development capabilities with suppliers, or even, as Cyril said, an asset to be customers or to have that ecosystem of buyers who are also suppliers. So that's one. The second is, and I think it has been touched on by everybody, is really how do we bring procurement to the business partners, both internally and externally, on their terms rather than the traditional terms? Meaning, how do we empower them to do business, to source, to buy in a way that's similar to the way Cyril and Paula talked about it? Less about bumpy, disjointed experiences, more like the two-click experience that Cyril talked about, but really bringing procurement to the business and the partners, stakeholders on their terms. I think the third is, I think procurement is redefining its value measurements. It's always been savings, it's always been compliance, it's always been risk. But now, as I think Vanessa just talked about, it is becoming more and more about impact on environment, impact on social issues, impact on communities. How do we drive revenue growth? How do we drive sustainable and resilience into our procurement organization? So I think the value measurement of procurement is changing, and leading CPOs are taking that to their organizations and saying, we should be measured differently, not solely by the measurements of the past, savings, compliance, et cetera. Fourth is this notion of the ecosystem. You know, the days of I have one system and it does everything for me perfectly, it's all built for purpose, people love it, people are happy, just doesn't work. So the digital garage concept that Cyril talked about is in effect this notion of I operate my procurement function with a best of breed, built for purpose ecosystem of technologies, service providers, whatever it might be, data providers, et cetera, rather than trying to imagine everything is solved by one platform, because we know that sub-optimizes the experiences of our stakeholders, but it has other effects in terms of dissatisfaction of procurement talent and slower processes and so forth. And I think the last is the uplifting of procurement talent. No procurement talent really wants to be a transaction person or a transactor, if you will. So I see the future here now where procurement's role is uplifted to be an evangelist, to be a coach, to be an analyst, to be a relationship manager, to be an innovator. And again, as Cyril said, it's his practitioners that are driving the digital garage, and it's no cost because it is those people driving that. That's a very different use of talent than I think the traditional use of I'm running an RFP or I'm processing a transaction, a rec, a catalog, whatever it might be. So I think there's this very material change in what we think our talent should be doing, and in fact giving them a pathway to those activities by way of using technology to replace kind of the routinizable transaction-oriented activities, that I think many procurement people have done for the last 10 years and certainly, decades before that. So those are the things that I'm hearing from a lot of different CPOs, is really about how things have changed and will continue to change.
Yeah, and thank you, Keith. I think you highlighted some really insightful perspectives, and I think they're very aligned with what Cyril and Paula and Vanessa have been talking about as well. I like the one that you talk about, the ecosystem. One of the things I used to talk about is, your iPhone, where you have the ability to have a lot of different technologies and a lot of different apps on your phone. And depending on the need that you have, you choose an app for that particular environment. And so there's folks out there that are talking about an environment that's more like the experience that we have with apps on our phone, even in the procurement ecosystem of technology solutions. So I want to move on to my last question, and this is the same question for all of you. If you were to provide one piece of advice to procurement leaders who are looking to elevate their roles, similar to what all of you have done, what would you tell them? And I'd like to go in the same order that we went in. So Paula, what's one piece of advice that you would provide?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. It's all about adding value, and we've been hearing how the value proposition can transform. So I will tell people there's no excuse anymore. Start with use cases. Have clear value use cases that you want to go after, and then look into the areas where you're already having access to data. Maybe not everywhere. You will have to build that over time. But where do you have some good data, internal and external? Then link it with develop those use cases to then add value to the business. That's a quick win that you can deliver that will start a number of other quick wins. So don't try to approach it as one big multi-year transformation. Start small, quick win, use cases, where do you have access to data, and go.
Fantastic. Great advice, Paula. Cyril.
Yeah, so Chris, I would say actually it's a bit more than one word, it's a sentence. Do not be afraid. So meaning that there's too many CPOs which are extremely afraid of what is coming. I was recently in a CPO panel and I heard stuff which was like hurting me. So I mean that the guy said, I did my e-sourcing deployments, I'm done, I'm not doing anything more, I'm halfway off my tenure, and I won't be able to justify any business case. Look, so if you're not disrupting yourself, someone will do it for you. And that's don't be afraid. I mean that the technology, we're speaking, for example, about ESG, think about how you've got to see all the commitment that we're all taking, but how you're walking the talk, how you're capable of demonstrating that you're walking the talk. You've got suppliers everywhere in the world, and you've got your team, you've got a limited number of resources, so digital solution will enable that. Digital solution will help you to really prove that what you're saying, you're really walking the talk. So don't be afraid. And again, disruption will come, so you better drive the disruption, otherwise you will be disrupted yourself.
Fantastic. Vanessa.
I'm fully agree with Cyril and Paula's view, because I think that if we talk about procedures, technology, and people, and those are the pillars that a CPO have, he has to revise everything, not being afraid of moving, the baselines of what is expected for a procurement area. I think that we've been suffering several headaches with very heavy systems. And right now there is an ecosystem of small startups with procure tech applications that are very, very focused on small parts of the end-to-end procedure. And this is the way to work. I mean, this is what Paula has explained perfectly well. Don't be afraid. Start using technology. This is not easy. Any change is easy. And it comes to my mind a very good book. It's very short, and it's called something like Who's Taking My Cheese? And it says at the end that if you don't move, the market is going to move without you. So be there, don't be afraid, and move and start using this technology that it's already here, instead of the past 20 years that we've been working with very heavy systems. So I encourage everyone to start doing those small achievements to go there.
Fantastic. Thanks, Vanessa. Keith.
I mean, I would say reimagine a vision for procurement that is through the lens of your business stakeholders, internally and externally, and drive that vision up into your organization, through other peers and leaders of the company, and down, and be relentless about it. Create a vision of the future that is reimagined and drive it up the chain, down the chain, across the chain, and be relentless about it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I was actually taking some notes as you guys were, highlighting these insights and this piece of advice, that other procurement leaders can take away. The use of, use cases and starting small, not being afraid and walking the talk, technology and, understanding that if you don't move, the market's going to move anyway. And to your point, Keith, reimagining, envisioning, the entire organization is what is that going to be as we look forward. So to begin, I just want to thank all of you. You all had great, insightful contributions to this panel. I know we only had a short amount of time to share a few perspectives, but what we heard, certainly helps to, like I would like to say, is mitigate any doubts about the fact that we are truly in an exciting and expansive period of time in supply management and procurement. And with that, I hope you all enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.